my own life, I'll find something worth passing on.
We do have to fight an uphill battle. We have to be extremely critical of the things that we see. I still think that there is a way that we can still make decisions to take back the smallest amount of control.
For now, gamers can soon take control of Snake for another action-packed adventure. Lindsay Toddy, NPR News.
Tomorrow on Morning Edition, a new action film is out this week from director Darren Aronofsky. It's got an all-star cast including Austin Butler and Regina King, but they're all being upstaged by their co-star, a fluffy cat. Listen in the NPR app, on a smart speaker, or this public radio station. It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Leila Fadel.
And I'm Steve Inskeep.
Good morning. This is meteorologist Russ Murley with your WTJX local forecast. This is Wednesday, the 27th day of August. Sunshine, partly sunny at times. Look for an isolated shower, 89 to 93 this afternoon. East to southeast winds at 10 to 20. Isolated showers tonight under partly cloudy skies, 78 to 82. Partly sunny with isolated showers, 89 to 93 tomorrow. A few clouds tomorrow night, lows near 80. And sunny skies on Friday, 89 to 93 degrees. Rip current risk remains elevated at area beaches today, so take care if you're headed in the water. Get an intimate look at the silverback and his family in the African tropics on Nature tonight at 8 p.m. on WTJX TV, Channel 12.
WTJX 93.1 Charlotte Amalia, your NPR station in the Virgin Islands.
The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.
Good morning, Virgin Islands. You are here on Analyze This with Neville James, weekdays from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. I am Governor Albert Bryan Jr. Today is the third and final installation of my subbing in for Neville James. I hope you've enjoyed the last 2 days, but today is going to be hot. So you're here on WTJX FM 93.1, your NPR station in the Virgin Islands. And we're going to be opening up the call lines later, 718-4555 and 718-0761. Of course, the area code is 340. We're streaming live at www.wtjx.org. Also on our Facebook page and YouTube channel and WTJX as well as streaming on live on Government House Facebook page. So we got a lot going on. And, you know, I love the discussion that we had for the last 2 days. And today we're going to have another discussion. We have two guests with us today that are going to be talking up what I have to talk about. So I'll introduce them in a while. But before we get started, from time to time, I really enjoy writing. It's something I've been doing since I was in high school. Putting down my thoughts about what is going on in the world and writing editorials. I even have a blog, but I don't publicize it so much. Some of my thoughts are a little wild and crazy. And this is one, this piece was inspired because I keep looking at people, and when you're the governor of the Virgin Islands, or I assume the governor of anywhere, or a politician, you start to take on a responsibility. And sometimes your responsibility is on hyperdrive. And it to me, a lot of times when I see the mood of the territory, I hear people complaining, I take it on as my problem and my fault. And, you know, I have a coach And I'm like that with everything. I'm a very responsible. I'm a firstborn for my dad. I have served as the oldest brother for a long time. I do have an older brother by my mom, but for some reason, just a tremendous amount of responsibility. And by nature, I want to fix everything and everybody. It gets into fight. You know, in relationships, you get into fight with females because they just want to be heard, and we want to fix stuff. So I'm a fixer, and I've been looking at people and trying to figure out, it's a mood. It's not only in the Virgin Islands, it's in the world. And I shouldn't say it's in the world, but I could definitely say it's in this country. And I wanted to share my thoughts. So I'm going to read this editorial for you. And I want to hear, I got two guests. My guest is Pastor Jeremy Francis, as well as Tarik McMillan, right? In the studio with me today. And I brought them in because both are sociologists, I should say, of a sort. One is a pastor, and you do therapy, Tarik. Is it Dr. Tarik McMillan? Not yet. Not yet. But about this piece. So I'm going to post this piece later on so people can read it. But bear with me while I go through it. So one of my favorite theories on humankind is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Abraham Harold Maslow was a 20th century psychologist who believed that humans functioned and were motivated based on a variety of needs. These needs range from the most basic things like food, clothing, and shelter to existential thought and self-actualization. As each of these needs were satisfied, you would move to a higher calling or a lesser need. He arranged these needs into a pyramid hierarchy that is still widely in use today. So as I mentioned before, food, water, and shelter are the most basic of needs, followed by safety, love and belonging, esteem, and then self-actualization. He said that if you couldn't get the most basic of needs, you would spend all of your time trying to secure them. For example, if a person was hungry and suffered from food insecurity, all of their time would be preoccupied by securing food and water. If they have these basic elements, then they would then focus on shelter, making sure they have a place to stay where they feel safe. Once this is accomplished, they would move on to social acceptance and having a sense of belonging in a group or family. Only if these things were satisfied could one then start to have self-esteem that encouraged you to plan and look to the future. This would allow them to save money, buy a house, and etc. They would be concerned with the long-term goals instead of short-term goals and would try to invest and figure out how to have recurring residual income. When you look at life around us today, you can easily find an example of how Maslow's theory works in real life. The more safe and secure you are, the more time you have to be able to do things that will set you up for a bright and prosperous future. You would have the ability to set up safeguards like rainy day funds, credit, and network of friends and family who could all help you if you ran it. In America, we have a democracy with a capitalist economy that is supported by social programs. Pretty nice mix, but in order for this economy to work, it needs to grow. The only way it can grow is if people keep consuming goods. We have the largest economy in the world, and the closest competitor is $11 trillion behind. California alone would be the fourth largest economy in the entire world. If people stop buying, the entire economy would crash. So how do we keep them buying? What if a country could artificially create an atmosphere that would constantly keep people in need? What if we could create a way to constantly show people that they don't have enough and their life could be better? What if we could keep them in the three lowest rungs of the need pyramid so they never have a chance to really stop and think about where they are, how much they have, and where they really want to be? How would we do that? Here's an idea. What if we constantly show them commercials of happy people who have more than they do and associate this happiness with symbols like gems, name brands, clothing, and cars? What if we make money their god and tell them that you could never get enough of it because even if they got a little, they would need more to be accepted by people who were obviously better than themselves? What if we created social media platforms that allow people to show their neighbors and friends that they are living their best life? What if we were able to create news platforms that could tell them about all the bad things that are happening in their community and the world so they constantly feel unsafe? What if we engineer it so that it turns into a competition and the ones who are not consuming feel like they are losers and have to buy more? Let's engineer it so they can constantly bully each other and make it so they can always humiliate anyone who thinks they're getting ahead. If we were able to accomplish this, then we would have reverse engineered an artificial struggle that was self-imposed on the people already most vulnerable and have the least means of escaping this make-believe hell. In a world where poverty is characteristically defined by starvation, we live in a country where the poorest people are overweight. In a country where there has been no war on the soil for over 100 years, we have people shooting each other on the streets over turf wars. In a country where education is free, the dropout rate is the highest. In a country where the poverty rate of 30%, kids living under the classification will still wear $100 sneakers and jewelry. Pay attention to the commercials and advertisement. Every uncomfortable condition that you have is now an illness or something to be cured. Tired? We have a pill for that. Overweight? We have a pill for that. Want to eat something your body obviously rejects by allergies? We have a pill for that. Constant consumption and constant need to feel great all the time. And if you still aren't feeling great, guess what? We have a pill for that. The average child tax credit is $2,000 per child. If we were to deposit $100 a month for that child in an interest-bearing account of no more than 3%, that child would have $28,000 on high school graduation day. That's $1,200 per year, $800 less than the credit people are getting now. This is a normal investment for the federal government. We spend about $17,000 per student per year just on educating a public school student. Why are we growing investment along with education if we really want to stop poverty? This is no accident. We have been learning geometry and foreign languages in school for decades, and no one teaches you about investing, saving, mortgage, taxes, budgeting, or finance, which are probably the most essential skills you would need to survive. Most of us spend $18,000 a year for health insurance and regularly stock more than $300 worth of food in our residence. We don't even think about how wealthy we are compared to the world stage. The average household income in a third world country is less than $2,000. And the average, that's a year. And the average salary worldwide is only $9,700. That's less than an unemployment insurance check for a full year. You get that for not working. The question that we must ask ourselves is, are we a victim of the artificially created Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or are we really suffering? Or is this self-imposed because we are just chasing the Joneses? Do you truly know what you want out of life, and is it enough? Have you took the time to realize the wealth around you and put it to good use? Start to pay attention to the amount of messages that you get every day that are subliminally saying, you aren't good enough, you are unsafe, you need more, other people have more than you. Money and things equal happiness, and you will be surprised how we have been trapped in the pyramid, present company included. When you look at the faces and you see the behavior of individuals in our community, it is obvious that we are not paying attention to the reality of our environment. After all, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world where people of all nationalities and walk of life get along. Why are we always in such a rush to emulate someone else? Is it hell or is it paradise? Ultimately, it's an individual question for each of us to answer for their life. And that's a piece. Now, I'm going to open up the phone lines in a little while, but I was inspired by, I know Tarik a long time. From time he was a budding student. Him and his brother Biko, real brilliant young men. Very proud, and thank you for coming home and making a difference in our community. And Pastor Jeremy Francis. I get the most inspiration from sermons when I go to church, and you were very inspirational the other day. We were at Stacy's mother's funeral. You had a lot to say, and I said, you know what, you're a good person to talk about it. So let's open up the conversation about, I think we're going to start with like the community's feeling of right now, like how people are feeling, like really pressured, I feel a lot of anger. I pass people in the street and they give me the evil eye, and I always laugh to myself. I was like, I wonder what I did to that person. But there's this pervasive belief that there's somebody or something doing something to them. Cat got the tongue this morning.
Oh, you want me to start?
Anybody,
You look
jump
at
in.
you.
Don't be shy.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners and everybody viewing. I agree with you. On my way here, I was listening to another radio program where the newspaper was being read, and I said to myself, what's happening? I've been asking that question for a while. What's happening? Because if you listen to the news, you read the newspapers, there's somebody beating up somebody, somebody arrested for domestic violence. There's the recent one, a parent and a child fighting over a cell phone.
Yeah.
And you start to hear all of these things, and you begin to ask yourself, well, why is it that we are so angry? Why is it that we seemingly to be so driven? What's going on that's fueling this inner anger that persons seem to have, particularly among a younger generation? And it used to be boys long ago, but now it's both boys and girls, or males and females. So you try to ask, well, what's really happening? And when I read the piece, I listened to it again, and I read it as you were reading it, because it was interesting to hear it in your own voice, as opposed to how I read it in my voice.
That's funny, because my sister always edits my stuff, and she goes, well, this isn't grammatically correct. I was like, it's a speech. It's not.
Right.
And in your voice is different.
To hear it in your own voice, I heard an issue of consumerism, and the way how, and you are correct, how media has fueled, or the worldview has fueled, the view of persons who are on the other side of the pole.
Right.
And if we are not careful, that drive to constantly get, and the consumerist society, the consumerist lifestyle, will destroy us.
It will, but you know what's interesting about that, right? So I have this constant debate with myself, because one of the good things about the Virgin Islands is that we don't have access to a lot of credit. And one of the bad things about the Virgin Islands is that we don't have access to a lot of credit. Because in America, credit is huge. You can't rent a home, you can't do anything without credit, right? But it's a way of helping people to live above their means and make themselves feel happy. But it's like crack, it's like a drug, because you will never be able to overcome it. So in order for you, I want that big TV today. I want to drive a Land Rover. I want to get you know what? We have a credit for that. You could pay for this car in the next 8 years, and it's $200 a month for the next 20 years. You want a couch? We get $50 a month. So you constantly take these little chunks, and then the next thing you know, you're in a hole.
Correct.
This is a cash economy for the most part, and so right now, as an example, I'm fighting with the banks. I'm like, you need to give more credit cheaper so people could buy the car that they want. So they could get these simple tokens of gratification, but they're also tokens of success, right? Because people need to feel successful. And that's in the piece.
There might be a problem with that, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I like to jump around a lot because my brain will be moving faster than my mouth. But one of my coaches told me one time, he said, what would you be without all your accomplishments? And I couldn't stop laughing. And he said, why are you laughing? I said, because I would be nothing. And he said, no, you wouldn't be nothing. You would be a person with value without all your accomplishments. And I think we're hardwired to really believe that we have to have things or medals or trophies in order to be of value. Tarik?
Yeah,
Oh, Gam. I hate that music. We're coming right back. The conversation is live here on Analyze This. We're going to be right back. Good morning. Good morning. We gotta analyze this again. You know, when you in talk radio, if you don't know, you always have the best conversations off air. You know, and I have to tell people like, don't talk, don't say anything. But we're here and analyze this with Neville James. This is your Governor Albert Bryan Jr. filling in for Neville for the last day. Today we're talking about consumerism, the pressures of society, why people are feeling like they don't have enough with anger in our community. And we have with us Pastor Jeremy Francis and Tarik McMillan. Tarik, you were about to tell us about your thoughts on this piece.
Yeah. So some of it I agree with, particularly the consumerism section of it. I think, like you said, without us buying things, the system crashes. I don't agree with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think I did at a point, I guess maybe grad school and then a little while after, but the more I did work, the more like I had conversations, I had sessions, I did more digging, you realize that Maslow's hierarchy, it falls short. It much like most theoretical orientations that are like Western, because they follow like this individualistic format where Maslow says that the highest you can get to is self-actualization. Right? That's within an individualistic Western culture. Right? That is, for myself, I'm going to be this. When you look at non-Western cultures, and when you look at, to some extent, communities here, maybe not so much right now, there's a collectivist mindset that we look at.
Explain that collectivist mindset.
So that saying of it takes a village. I don't think it exists as much anymore because of American influence and our push to be more individualistic.
Where do you think we get that collectivist? Because I thought about, is that a European social construct or is it a African construct?
I would lean more to say that's a African construct. That is like almost directly from like I am because we are. Right? So if we're able to come together and pool resources, pool information, pool knowledge, pool networks, we get a lot more done versus what Maslow is saying that it's an individual thing. The other thing that
no, before you move on from that, because you're digging up all kind of
okay.
Like, what do you think that's different than between the districts? Do you think there's a more of a collectivist mentality in St. Croix and a more individualistic in St. Thomas?
I don't know if I would differentiate between jurisdictions. I think it's person by person, community by community difference.
It just seems that St. Croix is always concerned about everything, while St. Thomas is more concerned about specific things. When their agenda is aligned, and I would say,
Governor,
it's more
if
of
you're going to make a statement like that, you have to quantify that a little bit.
So St. Croix has, like, if you compare to St. Thomas and St. Croix has way more social groups. A generation now that we talked about, our organization came out of St. Croix. There's a lot more organizations that are concerned. If you listen to the radio stations, people talk more about the general good, and there's always a kind of fight for the little guy. Where in St. Thomas is more of an economic concern, is about, bring me the business and I'm gonna take care of the rest. And in St. Croix, it's always more like when a company comes to St. Thomas don't say, what are you gonna do for St. Thomas? They'd be like, you're going to bring tourists. We good. St. Croix is, you come to St. Croix, how do you feel about the community? And what are you going to do for the community? And I'm not saying anyone is good or bad. I always know, right? I use the example of Diageo, right? When John DeYoung brought Diageo, there was a lot of, there's a mentality like some people like me who said, oh my God, this is going to be it. He's going to be able to galvanize the vote. This is the greatest thing that ever happened. And there were a whole bunch of people like, oh no, this is not good. And he got a lot of grief for it. He called everybody. He had a robocall one time we were having a hurricane, and he called everybody to find, like, the robocall would call, this is Governor John DeYoung, wishing you, making sure that you're safe through the hurricane, hope you're going to be good. That went over 10 times because of that feeling of emotion and care for the community as much as the economic input did. And that's why I say that. And St. Croix wants to know you care. St. Thomas wants to know that you're going to keep the money flowing. That's just in terms of how I look at it. So that's why I ask, is that collectivist, and St. Thomas definitely has more of an American economic influence than St. Croix does.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think the difference is I feel like when I go to St. Thomas, things feel like they move much faster.
Right.
I think that St. Croix, us Crucians, we asked about what this entity is going to do for St. Croix.
Right.
Because very often an entity comes here, and while there might be some kind of benefit, there's also like some kind of negative backlash or some impact that happens. I remember I was living away in maybe like 2015 or so, and I got a call from a friend who asked about this like black fungus that was growing along the highway next to Diageo.
Right.
And that was the first time I ever heard about it. I had somebody send a picture to me. I was like, oh, that is weird. What is that? So I did some research, found out more or less what it was. And I remember calling, I don't remember if I called, I think I did call Diageo, and I called maybe DPNR, I think, to ask about what's going on. And the response was so dismissive. The response was like, what are you even asking this for? Like, almost like be grateful that you at least get something.
Right.
And I think that's where we normally are when an entity gets here. And not to say that they don't do any good,
right.
But there leaves a lot of room for suspicion, like what we were talking about earlier with the amount of rapport building and trust that has to be built when doing work into communities, because very often those communities are left out of the discussion when the plan is being built. So naturally, if I have seen time and time again that an entity, an organization, an agency comes into my home, says they're gonna do something, don't do what they said they're gonna do, and then whatever they do leaves me worse off, I'm gonna question what like the legitimacy of it to begin with, and I won't trust you right out the bat.
So, and that's I think it's, and I don't want to go off topic, but I'm just saying, so collectivist St. Croix is more of that, has that more of that feeling in terms of impact. To me, I mean, but you were going ahead to say that in terms of Maslow's, that it doesn't naturally apply to all cultures.
Yeah.
But this culture is, when I said this culture, American culture is predicated on wealth, dominance. Donald Trump is the epitome of this culture come to life as president. And as much as we don't like it, right? It's the ugly side. It's this culture without makeup on.
And so I think where Maslow's falls short is it's way too rigid. Human beings don't move, and they're not motivated in the same way.
Right.
Because if
I agree with that.
If that were true, then if I didn't secure safety, if I didn't have a house, then I wouldn't be looking for a relationship, or I wouldn't be following religion, or I wouldn't be following anything else that is bigger than just securing the safety.
Right.
So that's where I think it really does fall short. There's so much more to go, but I think that's where it falls short.
It does. No theory can totally explain, because there's so many variables in it. But what I think I'm trying to get at by using Maslow's hierarchy of need is there is a constant push in this economy, in this country, as I want people to figure out, think that I'm talking about St. Thomas, St. Croix, and St. John, this country, America, to make people feel like they don't have enough, to make people feel inadequate, to
Absolutely.
make people feel unsafe. And that causes a great level of anxiety. I do this motivational speech when I was out on my own, and it's for people who feel a lot of pressure. And the first thing I tell people is turn off CNN, turn off all your news. You're listening to a whole lot of stuff that you can't do anything about, that's creating incredible amount of anxiety in you. And that adds to the stress a person feels. And stress is kind of like layered. You don't really feel it. It's like boiling the frog that they say. You don't really feel it. Is one of the things, a good example, I remember when we were small, if something happened to us at school, our parents wouldn't know till 6 o'clock that night when they get home. Now, you're sitting at work with your cell phone. If something happens to your kid at 10 o'clock, they're calling you at 10:15 to tell you about that. So, to your mother, your brother, your aunt, everybody, it's constantly bombarding you with all kinds of events going on around you. That is very stressful.
Yeah, and intentionally so. I think one of the things that I find most interesting is if we get to the root of this conversation, what will be there is consumerism and capitalism.
Right. Absolutely.
When you look at the news, even local news, the sole purpose of the news is not to inform. Not if I'm incentivized by getting clicks and advertisement dollars. That's why you look at CNN or MSNBC or Fox and it's on all day. All day, all night. Because if it's on all day, that's ad space.
You guys
repeating the same story
you guys
every
say that
hour.
part again, because messengers, right, is like, no, I'd even said it when Trump used to say it in the first term about fake news, right? I used to, oh, this dude is tripping. But being a politician, I say it too, because what you say, the point of the news is not to inform, it is to...
You know what, let me, I want to make sure I'm clear. The point of ethical journalism is to inform.
Correct.
But when you line that up with consumerism and capitalism, you have to make money. You have to sell space. You have to sell all this.
Ratings.
That's what happens. I have the utmost respect for journalists because when it's done correctly, and it's not a blog site and it's not just like Ponge Mela, then it's done correctly and you have informative things happening. But outside of that, it's all consumerism and capitalism.
It is. I mean, you got and it's so funny how they tune the commercials to the stories as well too. What are your thoughts on that?
No. And I fully agree that, and just like you said, they're timing things to get you to think a particular way,
right,
to get you to respond a particular way,
right.
And that is, and I'm going to tie it all into the assessment you made of the islands. It's because we have been socialized and cultured differently.
So you were talking during the break. You got to go back to this. That
okay.
you were born here, and then tell us.
So I was born here, right across the street, and then I went to Antigua at about 8 or 9. So I started elementary school here, but I finished all my schooling in Antigua. Then I came back here. Then I went to Jamaica, where I studied. I went to seminary in Jamaica. Then I worked all through the islands. I'm like eventually coming back home about 5 years ago.
So you have a good Caribbean.
I do.
Okay.
And the difference between when I came back to the Virgin Islands, for example, I found that to get anything done, I wanted to do something, I couldn't get it done. Why? I had no credit. So in order to get it done, I had to get my sister to sign on my behalf.
Right.
Now, growing up in the British Islands, we are encouraged, you don't owe anybody anything. That verse in the Bible says, owe no man nothing but love.
Right.
So the only thing you owe for were the big things that you couldn't buy outright. Otherwise, you were taught, be contented with what you have. Save your money for what you want.
Hang your hat where you could get it.
Don't hang your hat higher than your hand can reach. were the kind of things that were drummed into your system. And that is still pretty much still taught. You were taught, yes. And the islands, now that I'm moving away from that, I went back to Antigua the other day, and there are a number of younger persons driving a ton load of these little small cars that they've imported from Japan or somewhere. And that is now flooding the island with a whole heap of vehicles, creating traffic problems.
Right.
But it's the same sense that the young people are now beginning to feel, if I can own a car, I've owned something.
Yes.
Whereas in my generation, I was taught, don't go for the car. Catch the bus as long as you can. Go for a piece of land. Get a house.
Is that true? Is that true here? You think Tarik people, like young people, are geared towards, like for me, when I came back from college, I was like, I got to get a house. I got to buy a piece of land and I got to build a house, or I got to own a house, and I put all my effort into that. You think young people still, for the most part, have that outlook?
I think a lot of young people have a desire, but also realizing that, like, unless some magical intervention, a lot of that is unattainable.
But I thought that too, you know. And it's funny how there's nothing new under the sun. I used to sit down and my old man, I said it on Monday, my good friend Glenmore Martin says, start house to finish house. If you don't start, you can't finish. And I used to twist and turn. I used to go talk to bankers, insurance, lawyers, real estate agents. And I said, I will never, ever, ever get a house. And my dad told me, he said, you know, there's only one way to do this. You're not going to beat the system. So I started to save, and I put on and a lot of people don't know how to, but I put down 10% on my first piece of land. There was a structure on it, and everybody told me, you're paying too much for that thing. $53,000 for an acre of land. The cistern and all the walls for the downstairs were up. I could say it here. I put down $5,000 on it. I lie. I put on $5,000 on it through a Scotia loan and financed it for 15 years, 5-year balloon. And everybody told me, you crazy, you pay too much. I mean, imagine the house was halfway built for $50,000. That was in 1996, 95. But you gotta start, and it seems indomitable, but you gotta start.
And therein lies the struggle, because you went through a process. You took the journey. One of the things about what the piece you read about, when I read it and I think about it, is talking about how we are constantly being socialized, and so we are being socialized to glow up quickly as opposed to working our way up.
When we come back, we're gonna talk about that, because I'll tell you about the pressures too. That kind of like what they call a domestication from my favorite book, The Four Agreements. Right back here and Analyze This. Stay tuned. Oh, joy, and laughter soothes the soul. Good morning. You're on Analyze This with Neville James. This is Albert Bryan, your governor. We're on here till 10 o'clock. We got Tarik McMillan and Pastor Jeremy Francis over here talking about consumerism, the mood of the community, what we're going through right now. So right before the break, we were talking about buying when, how in the when you're young, the hurdle seems insurmountable. And even when you do that, I was telling my guests that even after I bought my house, there was a lot of pressure on you. I literally walked with holes in my shoes. My ex-wife now used to tell me, you need to buy some new shoes. And, I used to drive a car, I used to call it a lawnmower. It was like a lawnmower. One day the clutch cable pop on me going home. I call my dad and say, come for me, and the clutch cable pop. He said, okay, you want me to take you home? I said, no. Take me to the store. I'm going to buy another clutch cable and put it in here. So it took me about 10 minutes to change the clutch cable and down the road again. But no computerization. The only good thing about a car, God bless it, the AC used to work good. But that's it. But sacrifice is another thing that is a West Indian concept, and I don't know if I'm wholly aligned with the sacrifice thing, because my parents knew, you got to make a sacrifice if you're gonna get ahead.
But you can't get anything without sacrificing. There's nothing you can get in this life without a sacrifice.
You think so?
There's nothing you can get. If you are going to school, to get the top grades, you have to sacrifice the time of you have to put in the effort, which is a sacrifice.
Right.
If you go to work, if you go to college, you put in the work. You have to sacrifice something to get the grades, unless you are. And even if you are totally intelligent, it takes time that you could do. The time that you can spend out partying with friends, you have to take the time to sit down and do the coursework. So there's nothing that you can get in this life without making some form of sacrifice. The degrees of sacrifice, it might be different.
Yeah.
But you have to make a sacrifice.
Doing this show, I always say, well, what could you find to talk about every day? And every day I've done this show, I found like 3 more topics I could talk about, because we could get into a whole conversation on theology and the thought that people are supposed to sacrifice, and that life is pain and work and suffering, and in order to get you where you want.
I agree with that either.
Okay, good. I got. Okay, we
Life
did it.
No.
But let's get back to the nowadays in our modern culture, the TV, Instagram, social media, and other things gives people the illusion that success is instantaneous and moves people along the gratification line or faster. Like I was saying, when I was building my house, I particularly remember I got sick of when I got married. I put on $2,000.
You got married and then get sick?
No.
Oh,
Okay. I got sick. I got sick of again. My mom and everybody tell me, "Oh, you need to get married and everything." Right? I said, "Okay," because I was engaged for a very long time. But when I left the church and the reception, I went home to my house. To your dad saying, find a place.
My father told me that you find a place to put your head. You find a place to put your.
Exactly. So I knew people who would spend $50,000 getting married and then go home to their parents' house or go home to their apartment. Mm-hmm. I didn't take a honeymoon for 3 years. It's a mentality, right, of sacrifice to do better. Now, back to Maslow hierarchy of need. I had a plan. My whole plan was I was going to come back from school. I was going to get a house. I was going to get married early. I was going to get my kids early. I was going to establish my career. And then I would run for governor. And it happened like that, right? But so I planned out my entire life. This is what we call self-actualization. When you plan, it don't happen the way you think it will. So, my kids are exactly 5 years apart because I didn't want to pay for 2 college tuitions. Both of them were planned. I went and before we made Aliyah, I went and got the tuition from all the schools. I went and looked at how much babysitting would cost, estimated what the impact this child would have on my life. And then I started saving for their college tuition early. I got my house, so I got a controllable mortgage, so I would never be able to run for governor without having a mortgage that was like minimal. So I did the work up front to be able to do the things that I really wanted to do in the past. And I this is one of the reasons I didn't say it in the piece. People don't plan. It's like I look at my peers and I look at people now and I'm saying, okay, how are you gonna retire? And people really don't think about that. When you're young, I mean, I remember being 30 years old, I would think less than 30, it was probably like 26 years old, working in Hess, and them explaining to me about retirement and 401k programs and where to invest your money on the stock market. 26 you ain't thinking about you and get old, and it happens so fast. But this whole thing that I'm talking about today, and my goal is to get people to kind of wake up and realize that, okay, I might be alive for a while. How can I guard myself against consumerism? Think about where I'm putting my money. Think about how I'm planning my life. I have 2 children because I can only afford 2 children with the lifestyle that I wanted to live. I don't need to go to Paris or anything, but I at least wanted to have a family vacation. My parents had 5 kids. We never went anywhere together. Our family vacation, one year we went to St. Croix. That's the only time the 5 of us were together and not in St. Thomas, and we ended up moving here. So,
but what did that? Well, you may not have taken the trip, but what did that do for your sense of family and community?
I always had a strong tie to my community, and one thing I think we miss is the extended family. All the aunties and uncles that weren't related to you, but were good friends of the family, and your aunts and uncles. In that whole thing, that village, that collectivism, raising your child. But from a nuclear family point of view, I'll be very honest, and I think most Western Union agree. My parents didn't spend a whole lot of time nurturing and loving us. I mean, we knew we were loved, but you were kind of like on your own. Do your schoolwork, come home, they let them off in the street. You better be in the house. Don't be disrespectful. Don't embarrass me. It is a very vast, different way than I raised my kids. We had conversations. Then we're like, why you went outside? I went outside. Shut up! Don't answer me back. It was a weird childhood.
But it was a different generation of parents. It was a different style, and they parented the best way that they knew.
Absolutely.
And they showed you love the best way that they knew.
By feeding you and beating you.
Well, because feeding you kept you alive and beating you formed you. No, I mean, we're not going to get into the whole idea of capital punishment and living in
corporal punishment.
Corporal punishment.
They didn't kill us.
Right. But it was an attempt to try to make you
mold you
into a particular person that they figured would have been an upstanding person.
That's right. And it worked.
And by and large it worked. So they parented you the way that, I mean, they parented you the best way that they knew how. And why I kind of stopped you and brought that up is because I think your parents might have brought you here, but there was a sense of the same community that those sort of memories are, you can't buy them. Mm-hmm. You can't, I mean, it's nice to take the trip. It's nice to go somewhere with your family, see somewhere different. But that sense in which you have a community somewhere is invaluable. I understand the value of the trip, but I also understand the value of community. One of the things that I looked forward to of coming back home to live is the sense that there were people around me that I have known all my life.
Right.
That watched me grow up.
Right. So you 2 things there, right? Like the value system is changing.
Correct.
To your point, right?
Correct.
And we're losing that sense of community because yes, I definitely, my entire childhood was my family. We had so much family around. And who wasn't related was family still. And that cocoon to raise me. However, at a young age, I recognized things I didn't like. People ask me why I eat so fast. I said, I have 4 brothers. If you don't eat fast, you don't eat. I got tired of seeing the back of the fridge. I got tired of my mother telling me, you don't have anything in the fridge to drink. You have water, And I decided that I didn't want that for my life. And and conversely, those things really molded me and made me the person I am, because in a lot of ways I'm very, simplistic, but the gratefulness, right? I mean, I am abundantly blessed. Like every morning I wake up, I just thank God for my experience, because I am so abundantly blessed. And not because I'm governor. I mean, my entire life experience, I am always amazed at to be born in a place where it's peaceful, where people aren't trying to kill you. There's enough food to eat. The climate is great. You have people who care about you and love you. But we don't value that as much. We're not as grateful anymore.
So I don't think that we're not as grateful. I think that largely we underestimate the role of privilege and luck in getting us to where we are today. I think the thing that we usually say is my sacrifice, my work ethic, my all of these things, usually they come from someplace else.
It's funny you say that. I actually have a formula for success that I derive, but you're right, privilege and luck. Go ahead.
I think most times, and I know what that usually.
I can tell you luck, but I can tell you privilege and opportunity. But go ahead.
So include that privilege, opportunity, and luck, right? Because we tend to, and this is where when you have conversations about poverty and deep disadvantage, you look at it as like a moral failing, the individual failing, versus this person having to navigate this treacherous life.
Absolutely.
So to your
life
point,
would be life in.
To your point about like you feel blessed about being able to grow up and have family around and not worry about somebody trying to hurt you.
Yeah. Never been molested or like never even seen anybody get shot or killed.
And that is an experience that people have, right. And that very often sets them on a trajectory. Statistically speaking, if you are born into poverty, you will remain in poverty for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Like statistically speaking, of course, there's the anomalies, and you may have the privilege. Okay, for me, I just got.
Where the governor has said you have 5 children, and then you come and have 3, and then you have 2.
So even to those things, one of the things that I grew up with having the privilege of, my mom worked for the village at a point, and she had so much information about like STDs prevention, HIV prevention, everything that you would want to learn in a sex ed class. My mom, she just knew it. So growing up, these are the lessons that I learned that kept me from being promiscuous, right? That kept me from like making some of the choices that some of my other friends made, having unprotected sex, getting the STD at 16 or 17, having a child, that then sets you off to a completely different trajectory. Right. So whenever we have conversations about poverty, I think we have to say like poverty is such a neutral term. When you say poverty, it's almost like it just happens. But if you say deep disadvantage, you realize that these things like are done to people.
Right.
Like you said, our system will crash if we don't buy things. Right. So when I was reading the editorial, I was like, when you say they re-engineer these things, like who are you referring to?
Who are they?
No, there is. Without any doubt, there is a network of the 1%ers and other people in the world that have engineered us from time. This is not new, right? To be grateful because we are able to eat and think that it's our duty to work for them while they relax and make more, and that is our fate. And we have a lot of constructs, including religion, that reinforces that behavior. And to your point, like poverty is something that I fight all the time, and it's almost like showing someone like whatever you like to eat, like a plate of canca or something, and they hear like hungry, and you say the conch is right there, and they're like, I can't see it, I can't see it. And if you look at the programs that we put into place, the free education, the slice program, or the pre-K, we're putting in things that will help people climb out of poverty. But the mindset in the piece, the mindset that is reinforced by us all the time.
By us?
Well, it is reinforced by us because we all reinforce it in this community. It's just like all things are light and good. If you're not angry, you're not black enough. If you're not, you know, it kills me to see how society has pressures has made not all, a lot of our black men behave in a certain way, dress a certain way, think that this is their identity, but we gotta go. It's been an hour.
Really?
In the conversation. Yeah, we're talking good, man. We're going to open up the phone lines, but we're going to come back and finish some of these thoughts right after this. Stay with us on Analyze This.
The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters. The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.
Good morning, and just like that, we're at the top of the hour. A whole hour's gone by. We're talking about consumerism. We're talking about pressure, societal pressure, Caribbean versus European versus American, lifestyle sociology, value system. And you're here and Analyze This with Neville James on weekdays from 8 to 10. This is your Governor Albert Bryan. We're joined today by Pastor Jeremy Francis, Tarik McMillan. Here talking about all this stuff. And we're going to open up the lines in a little while. Our numbers are 718-4555, 718-0761. We were talking about poverty, and you made a good point about about poverty being someone's fault rather than it happening to them. I have this thing, I call it the coefficient of the formula for success is your birth, your birthright. So where were you born? In a rich country, in a poor country, poor people, your genetic makeup. Like, whether we like it or not, people have different levels of intelligence, aptitudes, and a lot of that is determined genetically. Then some coefficient of luck, and then your willingness to work. And that equals your success.
But define success.
So it could be anything, and that's an important. I have a whole presentation on that. You have to define your own success. And a lot of times in our community, well, all the time, the TV, social media is defining your success for you. If you don't drive this car, if you don't have this job, if you don't have that degree, if you don't have that girlfriend, you're not successful. So it's what you define as success. And I think a lot of us, going back, like, this is a whole nother show, don't really know what we want. And I say that in the piece too, because if you constantly chase the symbols, you don't really know what you want. And Tarik, I want you to talk to about the work you're doing in the community, because people need to know that, and why this is so relevant to what you're saying. So, poverty happens to people. They don't put themselves in it, and it's really difficult. And I realize, like, okay, we could put on programs like the VI Slice program, but if you're not if you don't have a listening ear for that opportunity, and if you don't believe you could be a homeowner, that it is possible, your brain will teach you that you should move and you should stay in the same pot. We could bring free education, but if you don't believe you could do college level work, or do you believe you can make it through, you're not going to do that. At the same time, I'm very conscious of, college education is free, but I got to eat for 4 years. You know, I got to go to a neighborhood where man trying to like hurt me, or I got to go in an environment where people trying to punk me. You know,
and I don't want to derail the conversation.
No, go ahead.
But that is a real reality.
Yeah.
I think in the discussion we need to also bear in mind that there's some people there's some persons whose present reality is really prohibitive. There is a struggle between the heart's desire and their present reality.
Right.
There are. It's easy for persons who have made it to a particular stage in life to talk about, you will save 10% of your salary every pay period. 10% of my salary is not being able to feed my children, or not being able to and so it's easier said for some persons who are on the other side.
Yeah.
But there's some persons whose present reality really hinders them from a lot of stuff.
Without a doubt. And that's where, I think I talk about it in the piece too, about us teaching people from an early age how to manage their life. Because if you are already a single dad and you got 2 kids and you didn't finish high school, you in a deep hole. And these holes just get deeper and deeper because you don't have the opportunity. So now, because you have 2 kids, you didn't finish your high school, you're trying to get them a good life, you probably working 2 jobs, which pulls you away from being home for that kid in the evening to give them the love and support. Let me tell you something.
So go back to the word we spoke earlier.
What's that?
Make the sacrifice.
But you make the sacrifice, but on the other side, on the flip side, let's talk about the privilege side, right? When I stopped working for the government in 2014, stopped being Commissioner of Labor, I used to pick up my youngest kid, Samaya, every day from school. I used to love that because I was working for myself. I had the time. And when I was working for government, like working long days, I get home at 7:30, come and talk to her. Yeah, nothing to say. You pick up a kid at 3 o'clock, they don't shut up. Mm-hmm. They tell you everything that happened in the day, but by 7 o'clock it's worn out. And I realize, right, that is such a precious time when you could get to shape what your young person, your child, your auntie, your nephew, whoever you're picking up, is thinking and doing every day, because you know what their experiences are and you know how they're interpreting it, and but if you're coming home at 7 You don't. And when you have people who can afford to let one of the parents stay home, the wife or the husband, because I don't want to be sexist, that it was usually the wife who is picking up that kid every day, that kid has a totally different experience. They ain't walking home from school and getting beat up or punked, and if they had a bad day at school, that parent is right there and can address it or not address it. I remember one day somebody came to me and said, she came crying to the car. She said, "Oh, they took my phone." I said, "They took your phone and it's in the office. You need to come get it." I said, "No, I don't need to come get it." She says, "Why?" I said, "Well, why did they take your phone?" She said, "I had it out." "Are you supposed to have it out?" "No." I said, "Well, your phone is gone, bro. Let's go. Let's get it out." So that's just an example of how you can have that formation and mold. Nowadays we mold with words, not with bamboo stick and ketchup and all that kind of thing.
So to that point, I think that's a great place to dig in when it comes to privilege as well. Right. Because being able to come home and have the space to talk with a parent, just talk and talk. One, you build the relational aspect of it, right? But there's also the impact that it has on a child's brain development when they're able to just talk. Like that's how you form the ability to comprehend and to be able to like express yourself in a way that you probably wouldn't have in school, because you're not talking to a child, to this child. A parent can ask you like probing questions, clarifying questions, and you're able to be a little more expressive. Now, what happens to the parent who is working 2 jobs and they just can't take that? They can't. They don't have the space. The supervisor is annoying them. The coworkers are annoying them, and then they have to figure out how they're gonna pay WAPA. They have to figure out how they're gonna whatever it is.
Maslow's era. This is what I'm talking about. The pressures of the society are blinding you to any long-term goal, any planning. And it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And I want people to be aware of that, because, you know, there's a lot of stuff in this world you can't control. So the stuff you can control, you have to do that to the best of your ability. And here's another thing that is controversial. I think in school we learn discipline. Sports teach discipline. Sports teach sacrifice. But all coming up through school, we didn't have the ability to do what we want. We had a set of rules and we had to conform all the time. And it was almost to like stupidity, like cutting your hair and sticking your hand in your shutting your pants. You can't wear a cap. Don't wear dark shades. It was just so much discipline and regimen, which is bad in some ways, but that is a discipline that allowed you to learn the sacrifice to get what it is you needed. Now, we live in a community where more and more people are striving to do whatever they want to do. How do we help people? And do you think in our community, in this society today, let's talk about our community, do you think you could dig yourself out of poverty?
I think with the right help, with the right network, I think that's possible.
What does that look like, though? What do you explain?
Those who have been out can't forget where they come from and can't kick the ladder either.
Oh, I have a whole piece on pulling the ladder up.
So those who have those who have come up to some extent, it's also a theory of Christian education. If you're at 5, you come down to 3 to bring them up to 5, and you move up to 7, and then you come back down to bring them up, so that you're constantly helping somebody else to get up. And I think that sometimes we work with, I had to do this, so you have to do it too. And we need to get to the point where...
Yeah, go back to that. What does that mean? Because, you know, we have a lot of us that think like that. I mean, I had to cut water. When I started to work, I had to work so and so. So therefore, you coming in now, you must not get anything better. Right. You must work, earn your stripes, so to speak. Which is there's merit in that to some extent. A little merit there. There's some merit there, but it cannot be to the sense where you have become so aloof that you forgot or forget what it is to struggle, so that you can't identify, you can't empathize with those who are struggling. So for those who have made their way out of poverty, right, those who have
come up to some reason where they can, where they own a house or own two houses or own two houses, two cars, and two pieces of land, to sit down and that sense of community that I think, going back, St. Croix values highly community. And I think St. Croix is, for me now, St. Croix is seeking to find a balance between maintaining community while still achieving some sort of financial stability.
Right.
And we have to get to that point where those who have come up have been able to come and can empathize and say to persons, listen, let me talk to you, build a relationship with you to help you for you to trust me, to say to you, let me guide you.
But
mentoring and holding hands and walking with and guiding with has to become a part of how we help persons to get out of poverty.
I think though that I have a whole piece about forgetting where you come from, right? And I can't imagine that it didn't exist then, right? But I didn't know we were poor until I went to college. Like when they just started to describe poor people, I was like, okay, we were that. But we were poor, but there was a strong sense of church in my house. There was a great value for education. There was a knowledge that you had to save. There was a whole emphasis on appreciating assets, investing in property, and having a home. The poverty that we are seeing these days and still in that poverty, there was a strong village of nurturing and support around. Now, to the point where, and I know this is true in a lot of communities, like I couldn't go on a basketball court and hang out, because people know my grandmother would kill them. They'd be like, dude, you need to go home. You know what I'm saying? My grandma ain't playing. So it was no way anybody in my neighborhood were going to sell me a bag of weed. Not going to happen, because they knew my family and they knew what kind of support system I had. So I know that we had people like that back then, but to me now, there are a lot more people in our community, kids growing up, that don't have that support system. Child molestation is a terrible thing, and it was great to make kids aware. In the 70s and 80s, when people became more aware of child abuse, child molestation, we lost a lot of the value system. It was good because kids became, but we lost a lot of the village. People lost the ability to discipline, to guide, to mentor other people's children. Not my child. You can't hit my child. When that was lost, we moved away from village parenting to individual parenting, and a lot of those parents were struggling. A lot of them were females, and up to today they struggle. So, do you think that's true? Do you think that the kids growing up in poverty today have less community support resources than they did maybe 30, 40 years ago?
I think that we have to contextualize. I think when we talk about poverty, we see like this person that's kind of like off to the side. Most people are either below the poverty line, and if you're not, you're hardly above it. Right. So going back to your point about people coming up, and we have to bring people up and not forgetting where you are, I think the judgment, the threshold is much lower for that judgment to start happening. I think the minute we are a little further away from being impoverished, I think that's when we start to make those judgments. So even to the point about like,
which judgments? Explain.
About poverty. I'm poor people in general.
Oh, okay.
So like the ideas about people who get SNAP benefits, and why is it that my tax dollars are going into this? Like to your point about like when I saw you
shopping,
or
your cart full, were you having your cart? I can't buy.
Right. Yeah. But those things, these social programs exist because without them, these people won't have anything. Like there's nothing there. But there's such a tendency for us to look at it and say, well, we don't get this benefit. Why should you get this? This isn't fair. Is it equitable though?
It is equitable, without a doubt.
So when you asked me earlier, and I'm bouncing around all over the place because my mind works the same way.
It's okay.
When we have a conversation about community values and individualism versus the village. I think as we've become more American as a territory, I think we're moving more towards the individualistic perspective, which and a much larger discussion about colonialism in of itself.
Oh my goodness, we could go there.
I actually have a question. I'll save it. I'll save it.
Ask a question.
You sure?
Yeah.
So one of the things, and this is probably, I've been paying attention to this specific thing since maybe the Young administration. In my circles with my brother, that's a slave chain. The thing with all the
medallion.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered if we have these critiques about individualism and we could see that we're moving in this direction. I think there's a necessity for us. I want to say you because you're in a role right now as governor.
No, you can say me.
But it's bigger than just you. It's as a structure. Why do we still why do we still glorify the thing, especially if we're having deep conversation about colonialism and
so it's called the Shield of Office or something like that. I can't remember the exact term now, but Carl Knight, my chief of staff, we have these big discussions about wearing it or not wearing it. It was actually created by Governor Turnbull, and it shows all the people, all the flags. But another show again. I, Albert Bryan, am personally appalled at our need to preserve the homes, buildings of our enslavers. I mean, we are obsessed with keeping this memories, plantations, and buildings of the people that enslaved us, and we are averse to anything African from where we came from. Even after we've been enslaved, by these people, we preserving all their stuff. So
it depends on what you do with it when you preserve it.
Well, we're going to come right back and we're going to talk about, because we could talk about the colonial effect on poverty on our mind as a people of color. Right back after this and analyze this. deep dive in today and analyze this with Neville James. Weekdays from 8 to 10. This is your Governor Albert Bryan Jr. WTJX FM 93.1, your NPR station in the Virgin Islands. 718-4555, 718-0761, area code 340. We only got one more. He's like 20 more minutes. I know, Pastor Francis, you got to leave out in a little bit. But we were talking about, when we got into a whole lemon, colonialism and its effect on people of color, and that effect that lasts till today. So our behaviors and things that we do, it didn't just start now. It started a long time ago. You could argue both of it. You could say it's always been an economic thing. It's always about one set of people dominating another set of people for financial gain. But strangely enough, those people who were being exploited and dominated most of the time happen to be people of color. So it always, I listen to a lot of Bob Marley because it's amazing that 50 years later, the music is so relevant. If you listen to the social commentary in Calypso, it's the same thing. And it probably will be relevant for decades to come. And personally, I feel we each need to do our part to dig ourselves out of poverty. And that doesn't mean the poverty of the mind, poverty of the bank book. We need to figure out a way to not let poverty and our history be an excuse for our not excelling, but actually be a boon and inspiration for us to do more for ourselves and for our people coming up. And it's hard, going back to the piece again, with all of the distractions of society to really focus and say, hey, and everybody can't be governor, everybody can't be a sociologist, therapist, a pastor, but each one of us could form and be an inspiration and be a help to another person. We could guide a person and just try to help. I tell my employees all the time, just try to help. Like, we meet so many people in service, government and private. When you ask for help, they just want you to go away. They will tell you something, you go away, so they could get on to whatever they were doing. But people are struggling, and there are a lot of resources out here. Let's just try to help. So colonialism, yeah, we're that thing that was created by Governor Turnbull, who's a great historian and everything. It's a symbol of the office. And it represents all the colonialists. But I like what Pastor Francis say, it's a reminder of, tell them what you told me in church.
Well, which one?
The preserving of history.
Preserve it. I'm a believer that traditions must serve us, we must not serve tradition. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I don't have a problem with traditions. It helps me to serve who I am now. Mm-hmm. So even I would, for example, probably disagree with the governor, and I told him that the preserving of our historical things. So I don't have a problem with statues of Christopher Columbus being up. I want to see what he looked like. Leave it up. But let's teach people and teach our children and teach the generations to come that this is who exposed us, not discovered us. Because I said
right,
I don't believe Christopher Columbus discovered us. Because we were here. You can't discover people who were already here. Mm-hmm. He exposed us to a lot of things. So this is who we are. This is who came, right. Exposed us. But when they exposed us, this is what he also, in exposing us, this is what happened to us in the process. Now that we know where we have been, let us now begin to chart a different course as to where we can go.
So to that point, you mentioned
so even the homes, preserve the homes. That's how they lived. That's what they did.
We built them.
We built them.
We did build them.
This is how they lived. But now we are in charge of our own destiny. Let's now figure out what can we do with that.
So to that point,
yeah.
You mentioned you're a Bob Marley fan. I grew up with my father telling me Bob Marley's a prophet. The words he's saying is completely. So in Ambush in the Night says, They say what we know is just what they teach
Tell
us.
us, yeah.
And we're so ignorant that every time they can reach us. When we have a conversation about colonialism and where we are today, very often we start to slip into colonialism as a thing that happened to us before versus colonialism as a thing that's actively going on.
Yes,
right? Because when we talk about colonialism, it is we are a power structure is enforcing their economic, their social, their physical might against a people.
Absolutely.
So when you say like we were in a place to chart our own destiny, I'll challenge you and say, well, you go vote for president. You know, like we don't have we can't we don't chart our own destiny in that way. I think there is legitimacy to saying we do need to not, I won't say lift ourselves out of poverty, but begin taking steps towards liberation. Because we have to understand, like what is the deprogramming of a people, or for a people who've been through all of these colonial powers, European colonial powers, to then a little more than 100 years ago to become American and not have any serious work done to understand identity and how all of these things impact everything that we do. So when I was reading the editorial, one of the things that stood out so much to me, I wondered, what would one of my clients who lives in this predicament where they are impoverished, what would they think if they read this? And I think they would internalize it, and it would become this thing that it is my fault that I am poor. It is my fault that I haven't been able to move up. I need to go and work and work and work. And what do we do as Caribbean people? We are Caribbean super people who try to do every single thing. We don't want to ask for help. We will sleep when we dead. We're going to build a house fast because that's what has to get done.
James, my son.
and that's internalized the belief that this thing is our fault. Now, there's always room for personal accountability, responsibility.
Right.
But we can't look past the active barriers that prevent us from taking those giant steps forward.
But you know, it's interesting you say that, because my father told me, you don't have nature's passport and all the cards stacked against you. You're going to have to work 10 times as hard as everybody else if you want to be successful. So I never felt entitled. I always expected to work. We've raised a generation of children now, as people of color, who we said, that ain't fair. That ain't fair. I was always taught, life ain't fair. Nothing is fair. But with that, there is a growing feeling that they are entitled to something and a life that is equal. But it's not. And to your point now, I'm always about, where is that balance, right? And, we could get political and talk about Democratic Party, but where is that balance? How do you it is not your fault that you are poor. It is not your fault you were born into a situation. But at the same time, you have to recognize that because of that, your resource, your opportunity is going to be less. In a kid with above average intelligence is going to figure it out by themselves. Like, look, everybody in this picture doesn't get shoot. I don't want to get shoot, so I'm going to leave this situation. But they may not able to be able to do that. How do we get people? Because when you become middle class, you forget. It's impossible for you not to forget, because things in your life become so happenstance. Like, I'll just give you an example. When my parents used to tell me they were broke when I was young, I used to say, write a check. Right? Because that was the thing. When I tell my kids I'm broke, they say, go to the money machine. It never dawns on them that I may not have any money. And when you live in a middle class level of lifestyle, you don't think like that. Like, I remember that one day this guy was telling me, I have $1 to catch the bus tomorrow to find a job. I can't come back to the Department of Labor today because if I use $1 and I can't get to my interview. And I was like, wow, like how is that possible? But that's very real for some people.
For a lot of people.
And when we write policy, when people write policy, people don't think about it. I have to remind people all the time. I've said with people, I got in trouble one time for cussing it. I didn't cuss him out, but I was very aggressive. And he was telling me he don't understand why, with free schooling, why kids can't make it. And I was like, you live in a house with a college-educated wife, you college-educated, you there's no danger in your neighborhood. The both of you show up, the bills are always paid. We take a lot for granted. But what do you think we need to do though? I always found I like action. Like I swear to God, I rack my brain on how to make things easier. How to figure out how to help. Like we lose so many brothers and sisters in the streets bleeding, man. And I always think that, one of those young people, they could have had a cure for cancer. How do we dig ourselves out of mental slavery? And to your point, it is an active operation of colonialism. It's more, I think Trump is manifesting it in a black and brown versus white in a subliminal way to make people think it's that. But it's definitely financial and economic. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's not racist. I'm saying it's primarily this is about money, which slavery was about money. You know what I'm saying? They created a whole construct to dominate people so they could make money and justify getting free labor. What do you think? How do we empower people? How do we, save more than one out of Sodom and Gomorrah? You like that one, Pastor?
Tell
us about what you're doing.
Yeah. So when I'm not here, I am one of the co-founders of Greater Changes. We're a behavioral health and wellness agency here, Florida, and a few other states. The work that we do is centered around liberation. How do we understand what a person has gone through? How do we understand what they're continuously going through, what the barriers are, and creating steps to go meet those goals. More recently, the work that we've embarked on, we partnered with VI Housing Authority, and we are managing a wellness center in the Mali housing community. It is.
Tell people what a wellness center is.
So traditionally, a wellness center has been a place where you just go and get wellness services. The company provides all the services. How we're looking at it, and this is all privilege and experience and opportunity, we've been in situations, specifically in business, where we realize that the nature of business here is so siloed. I think there's a scarcity mindset, and everybody feels like we have
we could do a whole show on that. We could do a whole show on the scarcity mindset.
But everyone is protective of the resources that they have, which is there's irony in it, because within the behavioral health field, we do not have enough clinicians to do the work.
Correct.
Like that's a simple fact. So what resource are we protecting if we let other people work? But for the wellness center,
say that again. You just brushed over it because that's important too. What are we protecting?
Yeah, because there's so much work to go around.
Right.
I think it's largely understated how competitive the behavioral health field could be.
But it's with that scarcity mindset. It's everywhere. And just for people listening may not understand, we have boards and certifications and different things that we have constructed that limit entry into certain fields. And because of that, we have great scarcity. Well, there was scarcity anyway, but this just compounds the scarcity. We have that in whether it's surveying, construction, and certainly in behavioral health.
Absolutely. So what we're doing right now, we are partnering with other entities, other organizations here and abroad. And if they're doing services already, come do it in Mali.
Right.
So I went through UVI Archie
Tell
Parks.
people where Mali is. Everybody
So
knows
Mali, beautiful town, Frederick said. I've spent the most time now being in Mali. So I'm there just about every day, and it is such a beautiful community. Like every time I go in there, I'm like, wow. Like you wake up to this wonderful view. I don't let that blind me to the fact that like there's poverty, like
real problems.
Like I'm not just specifically Mali, but we live in this place that like I wrote a poem with my brother a few years ago, and it was the first line was gunshots sound the same on the street as it does on the beach. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the essence of what we call paradise, right? But Our goal within the community is to get it right small first. I learned this when I went through the RT Parks accelerator back in 2020, and the amount of like guidance and mentorship that I got from UVI RT Park, and like how to make a MVP, something small, something that is low lift, get it right, and then scale after that. That's been the approach that we're taking. So the goal right now is, how do we understand what people need in this community and be able to provide those resources?
Okay, I have to run, so I like that. But let me say this. What the essentialness or the essential nature of that work is, for me, when I hear it, I hear one thing which also sums up the other stuff: relationship. Leadership, community work, social work, wellness work, pastoring, whatever it is about relationships. And when we can build relationships, we can build trust.
Right.
When we can build trust and persons can begin to trust us, then persons will begin to feed from us and take what they need to advance. So in terms of the work that you're doing, that's a real good work. But I like what you said. You are in there with them, because they used to tell us in college, shepherds must smell like sheep. We can't. We can't pastor from our offices. It's not going to work. Governor, you can't lead from government house.
Right.
At some point, you can't help people to be well and whole by sitting somewhere. At some point, it means that you have to get into the trenches, sit with the people, listen to them. And I think if we're going to talk about lifting people out of poverty, it has to begin with building a relationship with those we're trying to help, get them to trust us.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I know you got to run, you got a funeral to go to, but that's it. I mean, building trust, such a challenge. We're going to talk a little bit about that, talk a little bit more about what Tarik doing in the community. When we get back, analyze this. Is This right here with Neville James, weekdays 8 to 10 a.m. on WTJX FM 93.1, your NPR station in the Virgin Islands. Call in line 718-4555, 718-0761. Having a great conversation this morning. A lot of things: colonialism, consumerism, conspicuous capitalism, where we are as a people, and trust. I think, when I ran, the first thing I said is I need to gain the trust of the people, and the pastor left on that. And you talked about it when we came in this morning about gaining the trust of the community. It's very difficult to do, especially when we have so many people that breed fear every day, in these conspiracy theories of what people in charge. I don't know what it is, but once you get elected, people think you have some nefarious scheme, some evil scheme. But trust. I mean, how do you support it? We got a caller. We're gonna take a caller and see what the community is thinking. Good morning.
Yes, pleasant good morning.
Good morning.
And how are you all this morning?
Awesome.
Wonderful. We usually hear a cliche only in the Virgin Islands, and it usually has a negative connotation. I'm going to use it for a positive connotation this morning. Where else would you hear our governor on air sharing this kind of information to uplift our people in ways that we can? I appreciate you, Governor, and the crew that you have brought on, and you take the time to come out, being paid by the people to uplift us in ways that we haven't heard others before. We appreciate you, and thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. A couple of years ago, I stopped talking about what I'm doing and started talking more about opportunity, because there is not enough opportunity conversations in our communities. There's a lot of conversations about lack and scarcity and what we don't have, and never celebrating what we do have. And if we don't have it, like, how do we get it? This brother, Tarik McMillan, that we have here, his brother is like phenomenal too. Biko, he emails me from time to time with some incredible stuff. And just talking about emailing, trust, right? I always put on Facebook, and thank you for that, caller. Thank you for that. I always put on Facebook, my email is albert.bryan@vi.gov. If you have a problem, send me an email. And nobody use it. Shaylise, who works here at the station, I met her on the beach one day, and she's like the mayor of Glen now, because anything wrong in Glen, she'd email me and tell me about it. And, and if I don't deal with it fast enough, she'd just send me a follow-up email. She has my number. She texts me. And we take care of it. So I think that's part of the trust, right? That you entrust that your elected officials, people who are leading the community, number one, feels a community and is actively looking for solutions to do something about it. When we put forth a solution that is not about me, it's about the community. Our abandoned and derelict building is one of them. We had a community conversation. We pushed people out to talk about what should we do about all these abandoned buildings in our town. And people were like offended, like, oh my God, are you trying to take our land? I was like, the law already permits us to take any property that we want that's abandoned and derelict. What I'm trying to do is figure out a way to preserve property for our people. But the trust, the trust is just so hard to win. And then, we've had some unfortunate things with corruption in our administration, and that is just like, those are big blows, because they're just a whole bunch of people saying, see, I tell you, just because they're sinners in the church don't mean the pastor bad. So, while I'm here, I look for solutions. And at the same time, I have a very deep social sense of why things are the way they are. And that's why I wrote this piece, to talk about how we could help people appreciate and be grateful for what they have, but see the opportunity and gain clarity gain clarity and understand what they want and what they're willing to sacrifice in order to get it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I know trust is a big for you too, you know.
Even within like my work as a clinician, I begin all of my sessions like these are the things that everything that we say in this room is completely confidential, with the exception of you want to hurt somebody else or yourself, but because people have had previous clinicians who have not been ethical, who have not like stood by confidentiality, I now have to work 5-10 times harder to build that trust.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
And I think that the same goes for government.
Right.
Because for people who felt like the abandoned and derelict buildings was pulling my land away from me, there are people in the Virgin Islands who've been displaced.
Right.
Because some entity, some agency needed to do something, or there's been an agency that came into a community and said that they would do X and then did not do X. Right. So the role of building trust, like you're never gonna stop. Like the government's job will forever be to continue building rapport and proving that they're trustworthy.
Right.
And I think that's just where it is.
But in this community, and I can go to the call in 1 second. In this community, right, we should feel like this is like our house. That's how I look at it. Like if the highway got grass on it, it's like my yard in court. If there's trash in Christiansted, that's like my yard got trash in it. Like if somebody coming to me for help for food stamps or some other social service, it's like my auntie coming for me and need help. So we especially if people of color, some people will be like, oh, the governor was talking about winning. For me, it's like Wakanda. Like I want to win for us. Like I want us to be number one. I genuinely feel like we should feel that the police here are to protect us. They're about our community. If somebody, and that could be a whole other show, right? Again, how I feel about we as a society don't believe in the laws that we have because we have different value system. And I'll just say one thing on that. Because there are people in this community, when they're murdered, people don't feel no way, except maybe they're boys in their crib and they'll be like, oh, well, he had to come in. That is a value system, a belief that does not match with our court system, which is not responsive enough to what's going on in the street. But I'm going to pause because you make me think too hard, man. And take the caller. Good morning.
Good morning, Governor.
Good morning.
I want to applaud you for bringing all that information to all of us about how to get ahead. And I want to really congratulate you on implementing the VI Slice in particular.
Thank you.
That program, I know, has helped so many people and given people hope that someday they can create wealth by owning property.
Yeah.
And so I understand now where you're coming from and why you implemented that. So I'm very thankful for that, for all of us, and for so many other things that you have done and will continue to do. And it's nice having you on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I tried to be exemplary in terms of getting other people to do what I did. Is like we had a young man in here for the financial fellows. It is my if you ever I don't talk too much about legacy. It's like the legacy would be for him to make sure that he's helping Virgin Islanders too, that he's making sure that we have people who are gonna come home and support this community. And people look, I thanks for the caller. I look at you again when you say people come into the community and say they're gonna help. I understand that when I speak, people hear different things, and people hear different. It's just like you said, when when someone who is impoverished read my piece, they would feel like it's my fault, even though that's not my intention. And often in the community, I hear people say, well, all this money's coming in, it's not affecting me. Well, why isn't it affecting you? Is like you got to get in the stream in order to swim. If you're on the shore, you can't swim.
And you've shown people how to get in the stream.
I think so, but at a lot of times, and that's like when I have a middle class mentality without a doubt. I always question myself, like, am I doing enough? Maybe I need to put them in the water, and because people don't know how, and it never dawned on me. Because in talking to people in the community, they'll be like, well, you just apply for this program. Well, how do I apply for it? Well, you never applied for a loan before? No, I never applied for a loan before.
Yeah, we need a lot more education, and that's why I really appreciate you've educated a lot of people today with how you did it, and ploddingly and with determination and sacrifice. So I thank you, Governor.
Thank you, and have a fantastic day.
You too.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, so, reactions, Tarik, in terms of, because you work with a lot of people that are under, and I wanted to ask you that, is like, one of the things in we don't never have enough time. One of the things in the piece too was how we think pills fix everything now. There's a pill for everything now. Do you think that the duress, the stress that most of us are under at this point, is that something behavioral that needs to be addressed clinically, or is that like what 70%, 50%? What do you think part of our community needs that?
So I'll say something and then jump into it. I had a session a few weeks ago where a client was describing all of the hardships that's going on, and they turned and they said, is this normal? Is this like, is this how it's supposed to be? And I said, no, this is a systemic failure. Like, all the things that you are describing is a system that is not working for you. Right. I think we could go into whether it's intentional or not, just based on the impact of how these things happen to people. But I don't think that is specifically behavioral. I think on the clinical end, there is, how do we help people develop skills to cope with all the stressors while also advocating for them to address those stressors that are systemic. So maybe after the session, it's not just go do some homework and we'll talk about it later. Hey, let me see if I could find out what paperwork is necessary for X program, and let's talk about it in our next session.
Right.
Because the access to the information is is a barrier for this person moving forward.
Right.
So it's not just behavioral. It's how do we address all of the systemic issues.
I like that what you said. Is that the access to the information is a barrier. That's a real thing, And when you say a barrier, it could be a mental barrier, it could be a capacity barrier, it could just be
both, and it could be a physical barrier. Right. Like with some agencies not having forms that you could print out online. Like those things are barriers. Like the example you gave, like I can't spend my money on a taxi bus to go up the road and then come back down.
Right.
Like that's the money for the bread for tomorrow.
Right.
So like there's it's a literal physical barrier sometimes.
Yeah. It is incredible how, Bamale is in the abundance of water, the fool is thirsty, but it's not even being foolish sometimes. It's just not knowing there's abundance of water. And, like I said, 2 books everybody should read is Abundance. It talks about there's no lack in the world, and the 4 agreements. But people got some real situations, and, I connect with the community, and some of the problems people have, I'm like, man, like how I wonder how they decide this in heaven, like, who gets. That's why I always feel abundant. I mean, just something simple as having a child with like real behavioral problems. That's an incredible burden, like trying to help that person, and then the way that the laws are written, you're sick, but then I can't force you to get care. It's a lot for people to be out there in the kind of, I call them problems, because those are real problems, I mean, like, I have things that happen to me that are uncomfortable and inconvenient, but I am blessed every day and grateful that I have the life I have, because, sick children, those things.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I think the last thing, I know we like 2 minutes out.
Yeah.
As far as solutions, I think these conversations are where the solutions start. I remember when I first moved home, 2017, I was having conversations largely about colonialism, and they were just like, there was a circle that got it, and there was the others like, what are you talking about? Go away. And now it's almost a mainstream conversation. I'm here with a governor talking about colonialism on the radio, right? So it's happening. We just have to keep on talking.
Thank you for being my guest today, and thank you, audience, for all your kind words, your texts over the week. It's been a fantastic 3 days, and hopefully I get the chance to do it again. We got to make Neville go on vacation more often. 93.7, Analyze This. 93.1, WTJX, Analyze This with Neville James. He'll be back next week. God bless you. Love you. Have a fantastic day.
The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.